"If you bring my son into this again," she said, voice steady enough to slice glass, "I will say everything, in front of all of them. And when I'm done, you won't have a badge to hide behind." The man across from her laughed softly, like it was cute that she still believed truth mattered. Behind him, the ballroom's chandelier light turned every diamond and champagne flute into a weapon. Across the room, Kang Ji-ho stood with his baby in his arms, his face unreadable. Naomi didn't look at him when she spoke again. She kept her eyes on the man who had tried to break her. "Try me." The room went quiet in that way that meant the world was about to change. But that was not how the story began. It began with a train car that smelled like warm plastic and winter coats, a baby who wouldn't stop crying, and a black single mother with tired eyes and a heart that had learned the hard way how to stay gentle anyway. The crying hit first, sharp, panicked, the kind of sound that didn't ask for help, it demanded it. Naomi Carter kept her gaze on the window, watching Seoul blur past in pale morning light, but her fingers tightened around the strap of her tote bag until the faux leather creaked. She was 29, with honey-brown skin and knotless braids pulled into a bun that was starting to loosen at the edges, like the day had already gotten its hands on her. Her phone screen was spiderwebbed from a drop 2 nights ago, and the low battery warning glowed red like an accusation. 37%, no charger, no time. She had picked up an extra shift at the pediatric clinic, then another under-the-table weekend gig nannying for a rich family she'd never met, because her landlord had slid a paper under her door that said, "Final notice," in English and Korean, like eviction was bilingual. 48 hours. Her son Malik's school lunch account was negative. Her fridge held half a carton of eggs and a jar of pickles. And now this baby in the seat across the aisle, was screaming like the world had ended, and no one in this polished train car knew how to hold her without looking scared of her. Naomi finally turned her head. A man sat there with the baby pressed against his chest like a shield. He didn't bounce her. He didn't coo. He just held her, jaw tight, eyes fixed on nothing. Expensive coat, bare hand, no ring, a thin scar cutting through one eyebrow like a comma. The baby's face was red with fury. Naomi exhaled once through her nose. Then she stood and stepped into the aisle. That was the trigger. That was the moment everything started moving. They meet. The train hummed under Naomi's feet, steady and cold, vibrating through the soles of her cheap sneakers. She stopped beside the man's row and glanced at the baby first, not him. The little girl's fists opened and closed like she was trying to grab the air and hold on. Naomi tilted her head. "Is she hungry?" Naomi asked, keeping her voice low, because babies could hear panic the way sharks could smell blood. The man looked up. His eyes were dark, flat on the surface, like deep water that didn't reflect light unless it wanted to. "I fed her," he said. His English was clean, precise, no wasted syllables. Naomi nodded once, like she believed him. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle of hand sanitizer, the travel-size kind, and rubbed it into her palms out of habit. The antiseptic smell cut through the train's recycled air. She leaned in just enough to look at the baby's face. "She's not choking," Naomi murmured, mostly to herself. The baby let out another scream that turned heads across the aisle. A woman in pearls pretended not to stare and stared anyway. Naomi's jaw flexed. "May I?" she asked, holding her hands out. The man didn't move, not at first. His arms tightened around the baby, protective in a way that didn't look practiced. Naomi waited. She didn't smile to soften it. She didn't beg to make him comfortable. She just held her hands there and let silence do what it did best, force a decision. Finally, he shifted the baby slightly, not giving her away exactly, allowing Naomi closer. Naomi slid her hand under the baby's back with a confidence that came from years of night shifts and fevers and tiny bodies that couldn't explain where it hurt. The baby's crying hit Naomi's chest like a fist. Naomi didn't flinch. "You're okay," Naomi said softly, not as a promise, as an instruction. The baby didn't listen. Naomi glanced at the man's hands. His knuckles were scraped, like he'd met something hard recently and hadn't lost. "You're holding her like you're afraid she'll break," Naomi said. The man's gaze sharpened. "I am not afraid," he replied. Naomi made a small sound in her throat, almost a laugh, but not kind. "You should be," she said. "Babies break your whole life if you do it wrong." The baby screamed again, then coughed, then screamed harder like she was offended by her own cough. Naomi adjusted her hold and turned the baby outward, belly down against Naomi's forearm, supporting the head and neck. She began to sway, side to side, just enough to mimic motion. Train motion on top of train motion. Then she patted the baby's back in a slow rhythm, not frantic, not pleading, steady. The baby's screams faltered into jagged sobs. Naomi kept patting. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. The baby's breathing hitched. Naomi leaned down until her mouth was near the baby's ear. "You can be mad," Naomi whispered, "but you gotta breathe while you're doing it." The baby's sobbing softened, like she was considering the logic. Naomi kept swaying. The train lights flickered briefly as they passed through a tunnel, washing everything in a dim, bluish shade. In that moment, Naomi felt the man's stare like pressure on her skin. Not appreciation, assessment. He watched her hands, the way her thumb supported the baby's jaw, the way she didn't get flustered by the attention in the car, the way she didn't look at him like he was important. The baby's crying reduced to small, offended hiccups. Then, quiet. Real quiet. The kind that made the entire train car exhale without realizing it had been holding its breath. Naomi didn't smile. She checked the baby's face, the wet lashes, the trembling lower lip. Then she glanced at the man. "She's overtired," Naomi said, "and she doesn't like your cologne." The man blinked once. "My cologne?" "It's strong," Naomi said, like she was telling him his shoelace was untied. "Babies have tiny noses. Everything is loud to them. Smells, sounds, feelings." The man shifted slightly. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Not helpless, not weak, just unfamiliar with this kind of problem, the kind money didn't solve. Naomi looked down at the baby again. "She's beautiful," Naomi said, and then, because she couldn't stop herself, she added, "But she's furious," respectfully. The baby's tiny hand curled around Naomi's finger like a claim. Naomi's throat tightened, because she understood that grip. Malik had held her like that once, when he was small enough to fit on her chest, and the world was still allowed to be simple. Naomi carefully shifted the baby back toward the man. "She'll sleep if you keep moving," Naomi instructed. "Walk the aisle for a few minutes. If you sit down too fast, she'll wake up and start over." The man didn't take the baby immediately. His gaze moved to Naomi's tote bag, to the worn edges, to the corner of a folded school newsletter sticking out, to the cheap ID lanyard tucked inside, the one with the hospital logo. "You're a nurse," he said. Naomi lifted one shoulder. "Pediatric," she corrected, because that mattered. The man's jaw tightened again, like he didn't like needing anyone for anything. Naomi waited for him to thank her. He didn't. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why?" Naomi frowned. "Why what?" "Why did you stand up?" he said, eyes steady on hers, "when no one else did?" Naomi's mouth pressed into a line, because she knew what it cost to be ignored, because she'd been the woman with the crying child and the empty wallet and the tired spine, and she'd watched people look away like her struggle might be contagious. But she didn't hand him her heart in a sentence. She just said, "Because she needed somebody." A beat of silence. The train's wheels clicked over a seam in the track, ka-thunk, ka-thunk, like a ticking clock. Naomi adjusted the strap of her bag. The man finally took the baby, pulling her close with a gentleness that looked new on him. Naomi started to step back into the aisle. She had a stop to catch, a life to keep running. He spoke again, Not louder, just sharper. "You always talk to strangers like that?" he asked. Naomi paused. She turned her head just enough for him to see the edge of her expression. "Only the ones who need to hear it," she said. She walked away. Her sneakers squeaked faintly against the spotless floor as she returned to her seat. Behind her, she felt his gaze follow like a shadow that didn't belong to her. In 15 years of running his empire, nobody had walked away from Kang Ji-ho first. Naomi didn't know that. She only knew her hands still smelled like sanitizer and baby shampoo, and for some reason, that man's silence felt heavier than words. The train announced the next stop in Korean, then English. Naomi gathered her bag. She stood, and when she stepped off the train into the cold, she told herself she would never see him again. She was wrong. Naomi's breath came out white as she walked through Seoul Station, the air biting at her cheeks. The city smelled like roasted sweet potatoes from a street vendor and exhaust trapped under winter. She pulled her coat tighter and checked her phone. 31%. A missed call from an unknown number. A text from her friend Dami. "Damel, you got the nanny gig address? Don't let them play you, sis." Naomi typed back with stiff fingers. "Naomi, I got it. If I disappear, tell Malik I tried." She hit send, then immediately regretted it, because Dami would call and panic, and Naomi didn't have time to manage anyone else's fear today. She crossed the street toward the glossy building where the nanny agency had told her to report. Kangwon Holdings, the sign read in clean silver letters, shining like it had never known dirt. The lobby smelled like expensive flowers and polished stone. Naomi stepped inside and slowed instinctively. Not because she was intimidated, because places like this had rules, and Naomi had learned to read rules the way some people read weather. The receptionist's smile was polite until it landed on Naomi's braids and her scuffed boots. Then it got careful. Naomi approached anyway. "Hi," Naomi said. "I'm here for—" The lobby doors slid open behind her, and the temperature in the room changed. Not literally, something else. A ripple. Naomi turned, because everyone turned. Black cars had stopped at the curb outside like they belonged there by right. Men stepped out first, tall, broad, all in dark coats, all moving with synchronized calm. Security. Not the mall cop kind, the kind that didn't need to raise its voice because it had already decided how things would go. The men formed a line without looking at each other. Then the man from the train walked in. Same scar through the eyebrow, same quiet. But here, the air bent around him. People moved out of his way before he reached them. A suited executive practically ran forward and bowed. "Chairman Kang," the man said, voice trembling just slightly. Chairman. Naomi's stomach dropped a half-inch. Not fear, anger, because she recognized what this was. Power. The kind that walked through doors and expected the world to rearrange itself. The receptionist stood so fast her chair squeaked. Her face went pale. "Welcome, sir," she said, too bright, too eager. Naomi looked at the man, Chairman Kang, then at the baby carrier in his right-hand man's grip. The baby was asleep, finally. Naomi's jaw tightened. So that's why he had looked like that on the train, like he was holding the sky up with one hand. He wasn't just some exhausted father. He was a man people bowed to, a man who could buy the whole train if he didn't like the noise. And he had sat there, letting his baby scream, while everyone pretended not to hear. Naomi's anger sharpened, clean and hot, because rich men always had choices, and somehow they still acted like victims when life demanded something human. Chairman Kang's gaze moved through the lobby like a slow sweep of a weapon. Then it landed on Naomi. He didn't pause. He didn't blink. But something in his eyes shifted, small as a lock turning, like he had not expected her to exist here. Naomi didn't look away. She turned fully toward him, planting her feet on the marble floor. When he reached her, one of the guards stepped forward, hand slightly raised. Chairman Kang lifted one finger. Not dramatic, just enough. The guard stopped immediately and stepped back. Naomi's nostrils flared. "So you're important," Naomi said, voice quiet but edged. The executive behind Kang sucked in a breath like Naomi had slapped God. Kang Ji-ho's expression didn't change. "What did you expect?" he asked. Naomi let out a sharp exhale. "I expected you to say thank you," she replied. A beat. The lobby seemed to hold its breath again. Kang's eyes narrowed, not in irritation, more like focus. "You want gratitude," he said. Naomi's mouth tightened. "I want basic manners," she corrected. "The kind you don't have to buy." The executive looked like he might faint. Kang didn't move. He watched Naomi like she was something he couldn't categorize. Then he said, "Thank you." 2 words, clean, no warmth added, no apology, no attempt to charm, just delivered. Naomi blinked once, caught off guard by the simplicity. Then she nodded, because she wasn't here to win a war in a lobby. "Good," Naomi said. "Now keep walking aisles with your baby like I told you." A flicker, almost amusement, touched Kang's eyes. Then it vanished. Naomi turned back toward the receptionist, like the conversation was over. It was, for her. But as she gave her name for the nanny gig, she felt him behind her still, the weight of his attention like a hand at the back of her neck. She finished signing in. She didn't look back. She walked away. Outside, the cold air slapped her cheeks, and for the first time since stepping off the train, Naomi's hands shook slightly, not from fear, from the anger of being reminded how the world worked. Behind her, in the lobby, Kang Ji-ho spoke to his right-hand man without looking like he was speaking to anyone at all. "Sun-ho," he said softly. "Yes, Chairman." "Make sure she gets home," Kang ordered. Sun-ho's gaze flicked to Naomi's retreating back through the glass doors. "Discreetly?" Kang's eyes didn't leave the entrance. "Yes," he said, "discreetly." If you're watching this, and you can already see where this is going, drop a heart in the comments, because this man is about to make a very big mistake called feelings. Naomi didn't notice the black sedan that eased into traffic 2 cars behind her bus. She didn't notice the man in a long coat standing too still near the convenience store across from her apartment building. She didn't notice the way her building's hallway light flickered like it was trying to warn her. She only noticed the envelope taped to her door. No stamp, no return address, just her name written neatly in block letters, Naomi Carter. Her stomach tightened. She peeled it off and opened it with her thumb. Inside was a photograph. Malik, her son, standing outside his school gate, backpack too big on his shoulders, smiling at something off camera. Naomi's throat went cold. Another paper slid out beneath it, a message typed. "You work for people who don't want you safe. Tell Chairman Kang what you saw on the train, or your son starts walking home alone." Naomi stared at the words until they blurred. Then she folded the paper carefully, because panic was loud, and Naomi had learned the hard way that loud panic got you killed. She walked inside and locked the door, once, twice. Then she stood in the dim kitchen light and pressed her fingertips to her lips like a prayer. Not because she believed God would intervene, because she needed her hands to stop trembling before Malik came out of his room and saw his mother scared. The antagonist had made the first shadow move, and they wanted something from her. Specifically, they wanted her close to Kang Ji-ho. They wanted her to speak. They wanted her to become bait. The next morning, Naomi walked Malik to school like she always did. She wore her coat zipped to her chin. She wore a calm face like armor. She held Malik's hand a little tighter than usual, and when he looked up at her, she loosened her grip immediately. Because Malik noticed everything. Because Malik asked questions Naomi didn't always have safe answers for. The sidewalk was crowded with parents and kids, and the smell of fish-shaped pastries from the bakery on the corner. Naomi scanned reflections in windows as they passed. A habit, not paranoia. Experience. She didn't see anyone obvious. That didn't mean anything. At the school gate, Malik turned and wrapped his arms around her waist, quick and fierce. "You workin' a lot," he mumbled into her coat. Naomi rubbed his back through the thick fabric. "Just for a little while," she said. "Then we'll get pancakes this weekend." Malik pulled back. Real pancakes or struggle pancakes? Naomi's mouth twitched. Real pancakes, she promised, with whipped cream. Malik grinned, gap-toothed and bright. He ran through the gate. Naomi watched until he disappeared into the building. Then she turned and froze. Kang Ji-ho stood across the street near a black car, hands in his coat pockets like he belonged on any sidewalk in Seoul. Soon-ho stood a few steps behind him, silent as a statue. Kang's gaze was on Naomi, not searching, waiting. Naomi crossed the street without thinking. Each step felt like a choice. Each step felt like a line she'd sworn she wouldn't cross. When she reached him, she stopped close enough to smell his cologne, cedar and something darker underneath, like smoke trapped in expensive fabric. She kept her chin lifted. "Are you following me?" Naomi asked. Kang didn't deny it. He didn't pretend this was coincidence. He simply said, "Yes." Naomi stared. Soon-ho's expression didn't change, but his hand shifted slightly, like he was ready for Naomi to do something dramatic. Naomi didn't. She laughed once, sharp. "You have an entire city to run," she said, "and you're stalking a pediatric nurse." Kang's gaze didn't flicker. "I'm not stalking you," he said. "I'm watching the space around you." Naomi's jaw tightened. "That's the same thing with better branding." Kang's eyes moved past her briefly, scanning the street, the corners, the flow of people. Then back to her. "You received something," he said. Naomi didn't answer. Her silence was an answer anyway. Kang stepped closer, just enough that Naomi had to tilt her head slightly to keep eye contact. He still didn't tower over her with arrogance. He just existed with intensity. "Show me," he said. Naomi's fingers tightened around her tote strap. "No," she replied. Soon-ho's eyes narrowed. Kang lifted a hand slightly, a quiet command. Soon-ho went still again. Naomi noticed. Of course she noticed. That kind of control was loud to people who'd lived without it. Naomi's mouth pressed into a line. "You don't get to order me," she said. "Not because you're rich, not because you're feared, not because you finally learned how to say thank you." Kang watched her for a long moment. Then he said something Naomi didn't expect. "Good," he murmured. "Keep that." Naomi blinked. "Keep what?" "The part of you that refuses," he said. "It will keep you alive." Naomi's throat tightened despite herself, because she knew men like this didn't hand out advice for free. "Why are you here?" Naomi asked, forcing her voice steady. Kang's gaze flicked toward the school gate. "Because someone crossed a line," he said, "and you are standing too close to it." Naomi swallowed. The cold air sharpened in her lungs. She reached into her coat pocket slowly and pulled out the folded paper in the photograph. She held them out. Kang took them. His eyes dropped to the picture of Malik. Something changed in his face. Not softness, not pity. Something colder, more dangerous. A muscle in his jaw flexed once, then stilled. Soon-ho leaned in slightly to read. His expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. Kang folded the photo again, carefully, like it mattered. Then he looked at Naomi. "Did you see something on the train?" he asked, "that you didn't tell me?" Naomi's spine stiffened. She remembered the train car, the baby's screams, the way Kang's gaze had lifted once, not at Naomi, but past her shoulder, like he'd registered movement, like he'd noticed someone. Naomi's stomach turned. "There was a man," Naomi said slowly. "He was watching, not like normal nosy, like waiting." Kang's eyes narrowed. Naomi continued, because Malik's face was on that photo, and Naomi would burn any bridge necessary if it meant her son stayed safe. "He got off 2 stops after me," Naomi said. "But before he did, he took a call. He said, 'Detective Park,' out loud. Soon-Ho's gaze snapped to Kang. Kang's expression didn't change, but the air around him did. Naomi watched it happen with a nurse's attention to subtle symptoms, a rise in danger, a drop in warmth. "Detective Park Min-jun," Soon-Ho said quietly. Naomi's throat tightened. "So you know him?" Kang handed Naomi back the folded paper. His fingers brushed hers, accidental, brief, still somehow too intimate for a morning sidewalk. "He's not supposed to be involved," Kang said. Naomi let out a humorless laugh. "Funny how 'supposed to' works," she muttered. Kang's gaze held hers. "You should not go to work today," he said. Naomi's eyes flashed. "I have bills," she replied, "and a kid, and a landlord who doesn't care about your enemies." Kang watched her like he was running numbers in his head. Then he said evenly, "I will cover it." Naomi's mouth hardened immediately. "No." "I will make it disappear," he corrected. "Your landlord, your bills." Naomi stepped back half a step, like the offer had teeth. "There it is," she said. "The rich man's solution." Kang's voice stayed quiet. "It's the only solution that's fast enough." Naomi's nostrils flared. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't soften. "I don't need you," she said. Kang looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that measured and calculated and came to a conclusion. "No," he agreed quietly. "You don't. That's what makes this interesting." Naomi's throat tightened, because she hated that part of her heard that as respect. She forced her voice steady. "What do you want from me?" Naomi asked, "besides obedience?" Kang's gaze didn't flicker. "I want you alive," he said. "And I want your son alive. That is not negotiable." Naomi stared at him, because something about the way he said it, flat, certain, made it feel like the world had already agreed. Before Naomi could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. A text from an unknown number. "Look up." Naomi's breath caught. She lifted her gaze. Across the street, on the second floor of the cafe above the bakery, a man sat by the window. He held a coffee cup. He looked directly at Naomi. Then he smiled and lifted his phone slightly, as if taking a photo. Naomi's blood went cold. Kang's head turned slowly, following Naomi's line of sight. Soon-Ho moved first, one step, then another, fast but controlled. Kang didn't chase. He didn't run. He just watched the window. The man in the cafe stood and walked away calmly, like he had done what he came to do. Naomi's fingers clenched around her phone until the cracked screen bit her skin. Kang looked at Naomi again. "Now," he said quietly, "you will come with me." Naomi's eyes flashed. "I'm not your property." Kang's gaze sharpened. "No," he said, "you're not." "But you are being hunted." Naomi's chest rose once, hard. Her mind sprinted through options. Go home and lock the door? He already knew where she lived. Go to the police? Detective Park was police. Go to work? That would make her predictable. And Malik? Naomi's throat tightened. She made her choice. Not because Kang was powerful, because Malik was small. Naomi nodded once. "Fine," she said, "but I'm calling my friend to pick up my son." Kang didn't argue. He simply held out his hand, not touching her, not grabbing. An offer. A path. Naomi didn't take his hand. She walked past it and headed for the car. Kang watched her like something in his chest had just shifted. Soon-Ho opened the back door. Warm air spilled out, smelling faintly like leather and clean linen. Naomi slid inside. The door closed with a heavy click, and the street noise vanished, like the world had been sealed away. Naomi stared out the tinted window as the car pulled away. Her reflection stared back. Calm face, shaking hands. She didn't cry. Not now. Not ever in front of the wrong people. Kong's world was quiet in a way Naomi didn't trust. Not peaceful. Controlled. The penthouse elevator opened into a private foyer with pale wood floors and a single abstract painting that looked like someone had tried to capture a storm without admitting it. The air smelled like clean citrus and expensive incense, warm but not cozy. Naomi stepped out first because she refused to be escorted like luggage. Soon-ho remained near the elevator, eyes scanning. Kong walked beside Naomi, not in front. That detail irritated her more than it should have, because it felt like consideration, and Naomi didn't want to accept softness from a man who lived on fear. Naomi turned abruptly. "Where is your baby?" she asked. Kong didn't blink. "Safe," he said. Naomi's mouth tightened. "That's not an answer." Kong's gaze held hers. "Neither is fine when you are not," he replied. Naomi stared, because he had said it like fact, like he'd been watching long enough to learn her lies. Naomi exhaled sharply. "Don't psychoanalyze me," she said. "I'm not your project." Kong stepped closer, stopping just inside her space, not touching, just there. His voice lowered. "I don't build projects," he said. "I build outcomes." Naomi's eyes flashed. "And what outcome are you building with me?" Kong's gaze flicked to Naomi's tote bag again, to the worn zipper, to the hospital lanyard, to the school newsletter corner. "You and your son breathing," he said. Naomi's throat tightened. She forced herself to look away first, because if she didn't, she might do something reckless, like believe him. Soon-ho returned, silent, and gestured toward a hallway. "Your room," he said to Naomi, voice respectful but not warm. Naomi stared at him. "You talk?" she asked. Soon-ho blinked once. "Sometimes," he replied. Naomi huffed a short laugh despite herself. Kong's mouth twitched faintly. Then it flattened again. Naomi followed the hallway into a guest room that looked like a magazine spread. White duvet, soft lighting, a view of the Han River slicing through the city like silver glass. She stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. Not locked, but Naomi still checked it. Once, twice. Habit. She set her bag down and turned. On the dresser sat a small paper bag from a bakery. Naomi walked closer. Inside was a slice of sweet potato cake and a small container of seaweed soup. Miokguk. Naomi froze, because she had mentioned once, on the train, half talking to the baby more than the man, that her son loved soup and that her mother used to make seaweed soup when Naomi was sick. Naomi hadn't meant to offer history. It had just slipped out, because babies pulled truth from you like gravity. Naomi stared at the food. A gesture. Not grand, not flashy. Specific. Naomi's throat tightened in a way she didn't like. She hated being seen, because being seen made it harder to disappear when things went wrong. A soft knock came at the door. Naomi opened it. Kong stood there holding a thin folder. He extended it without stepping inside. Naomi took it. Her fingers brushed paper. Inside were printed photos. The man from the cafe, a license plate, a blurred shot of him entering a police building. Detective Park. Naomi's stomach dropped. Kong watched her face the way doctors watched monitors. "You're shaking," he said. Naomi snapped the folder shut. "I'm fine," she lied. Kong's gaze didn't change. "You're not," he corrected. Naomi lifted her chin. "What do you want me to do?" she demanded. "Hide here while you handle it with whatever you do?" Kong's voice stayed calm. "Yes." Naomi let out a sharp laugh. No! Kong's eyes narrowed slightly. Naomi stepped forward, closing the distance herself. You don't get to decide, she said. Not for me. Not for my son. Kong's gaze dropped briefly to Naomi's hands. They were clenched, not trembling now. Anger had steadied them. Kong looked back up. You have a child, he said. Naomi's jaw tightened. Yes. And you still walked toward my baby on that train, he said, without knowing who I was. Naomi's throat tightened. She hated that he remembered that detail like it meant something. Naomi crossed her arms. She was crying, Naomi said. That's what babies do. Somebody needed to help. Kong's gaze held hers. That is not how most people live, he said quietly. Naomi's eyes flashed. You mean most people with money, she corrected. Most people with security. Most people who can afford to look away. Kong didn't argue. He simply said, Eat. Naomi stared. What? Kong's gaze flicked past her shoulder toward the soup. You haven't eaten, he said. Your blood sugar is low. Your voice changes when it is. Naomi's breath caught. Because he was right. Because she hadn't noticed she'd skipped breakfast. Because she hated that he had. Naomi looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. Fine, she said, but I'm not staying here forever. Kong stepped inside the room, slow, controlled. He stopped near the window, looking out at the city like he owned the view. Maybe he did. Naomi opened the soup container. Steam rose, salty and clean. Her stomach tightened painfully. She ate standing up because sitting felt too vulnerable. Kong didn't watch her eat. He watched the reflection of the hallway in the glass, as if danger might appear behind them. Naomi swallowed. Who is Detective Park? She asked. Kong's voice stayed flat. A man who wants what I have, he said. Naomi's jaw tightened. And why does he want me? Kong's gaze flicked to her. Because you are close enough to touch what he cannot, he said. And because he believes you will break. Naomi's mouth hardened. I don't break, she said. Kong's eyes held hers. I know, he replied. The words landed heavier than they should have. Naomi looked away first again, furious at herself. A phone buzzed. Kong pulled his phone out and glanced at the screen. His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders tightened. He answered without saying hello. A beat of silence. Then, quietly, Kong said one word in Korean, cold enough to make Naomi's skin prickle. Jashik. He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket. Naomi swallowed. What does that mean? She asked. Kong's gaze stayed on the city. It's not for you, he said. Naomi's mouth tightened. Everything is for me if it involves my son, she snapped. Kong's gaze cut to her. Silence stretched. Then he said, quieter. It means someone is about to regret being careless. Naomi's stomach tightened. She set the soup down. Where is Malik? Naomi demanded. I need to see him. Kong's voice remained calm. Your friend Dami picked him up, Kong said. Naomi froze. What? Kong's gaze didn't flinch. She is loud, he added, as if that explained how he knew her. Naomi's hands clenched. I didn't tell you her name, Naomi said. Kong stepped closer, his voice lowered. I looked for you, he said simply. The sentence hit Naomi like a shove, because it wasn't romantic. It was terrifying. It meant he could find her any time. It meant he already had. Naomi's chest rose once, sharp. You ran a background check on me, Naomi said, voice shaking with anger now. You invaded my life. Kong didn't deny it. I verified the threats were real, he said. Naomi laughed once, sharp and bitter. You don't verify threats, she snapped. You collect leverage. Kang's gaze hardened. Yes, he said, and I used it to make sure your child left school alive. Naomi's throat tightened so hard it hurt. A beat. Naomi turned away, walking to the window just to put space between them. The city glittered below. So many lights, so many lives. Naomi pressed her palm against the cold glass. Her reflection looked like a woman trying not to fall apart. Kang's voice came from behind her, quieter now. You were going to go to the police, he said. Naomi didn't answer. Kang continued anyway. Detective Park would have met you, he said. He would have smiled. He would have offered you help. And he would have taken your son the moment you handed him fear. Naomi swallowed hard. She didn't cry. She had learned a long time ago that crying in front of the wrong people was a form of surrender. She kept her face still. She kept her voice level. But her hands, she couldn't stop her hands from shaking just slightly, and he saw it. He saw it, and he said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would matter yet. Naomi turned back slowly. Her eyes were wet but fierce. You don't get points for being right, she said. Kang's gaze held hers. I'm not asking for points, he replied. Naomi's voice broke slightly. Then what are you asking for? Kang stepped closer, close enough that Naomi could smell him again. Cedar, smoke, something dangerously calm. His gaze dropped briefly to Naomi's mouth, then lifted back to her eyes, as if catching himself doing something human. He said something in Korean, low, almost like it slipped out before he could lock it away. Hajima. Naomi's breath caught. What does that mean? She demanded, because her voice needed to do something other than shake. Kang's jaw tightened. He looked away. It means nothing, he said. But the narration, the truth, sat heavy in the silence. It meant, don't do that, / stop it. Not stop arguing. Stop looking like you might fall apart, because it makes me want to do something I cannot afford. Naomi swallowed. She took a step back, forcing distance, because distance was safety, because closeness was where people started making promises they couldn't keep. A knock came at the door. Soon-ho stepped in, face unreadable. Chairman, he said, we have a problem. Kang's gaze sharpened. What? Soon-ho held out a tablet. On the screen was a live stream clip from outside Malik's school, a blurry video of Naomi walking Malik to the gate that morning. The caption read in Korean, Foreign woman connected to Chairman Kang. Naomi's blood went cold, because it wasn't just a threat anymore. It was exposure, a target painted on her back in public ink. Kang's jaw tightened. Naomi's voice came out low. You did this, she said, not fully accusing, not fully asking. Kang's gaze snapped to her. I did not, he said. Naomi swallowed. Then she said the real fear. They're going to come for Malik. Kang's voice dropped. They will try, he said. Naomi stared at him. Her chest rose and fell once. Then she spoke, steady, cutting through the luxury and the fear. I'm going to my son, she said. Kang stepped into her path. You're not leaving, he said. Statement, not request. Naomi's eyes flashed. Watch me. Kang's gaze held hers. For one dangerous moment, the space between them tightened like a wire pulled too hard. Then Kang's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time since Naomi met him, his expression cracked. Just slightly. Fear. Real. He answered. A beat of silence. Then Kang's voice went colder than the winter outside. "Where?" He listened. His gaze lifted to Naomi, and the look in his eyes was the beginning of the end of something. "Malik Carter," Kang said quietly, as if tasting the name. Naomi froze. Kang ended the call. Soon-Ho's posture shifted, ready. Naomi's breath came out thin. "What?" she demanded. Kang stepped closer. His voice was low. "Detective Park has your son," he said. Naomi's world narrowed to a single point. No sound, no light, just that sentence. And the fire between them, every argument, every almost soft moment, collapsed into one brutal truth. This was no longer about Kang's empire. This was about Naomi's child, and Naomi would burn anything to get him back. Okay, if you are still here, and I know you are, drop a Kang Ji-ho in the comments right now, because this man just said Hajima, and I need you to understand what that means. Subscribe if you haven't. Ring the bell. Do not let this story find you without a notification. Naomi moved before anyone could tell her not to. Her body didn't wait for her mind to catch up. She grabbed her tote bag, yanked it onto her shoulder, and headed for the door. Soon-Ho stepped into her path. Naomi's eyes went feral. "Move," she said. Soon-Ho didn't move. Kang's voice cut through. "Let her pass," he said. Soon-Ho hesitated. Kang didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Soon-Ho stepped aside instantly. Naomi walked out. The hallway felt too bright, too clean, like the world didn't understand what had just been stolen from her. Kang caught up in 3 long strides, blocking the elevator with his arm. "You will not go alone," he said. Naomi glared at him. "You think I care about alone?" she snapped. "That man has my son." Kang's gaze held hers. "I know," he said. Naomi's throat tightened. "Then stop talking," she said, "and get me to him." Kang stared for a beat. Then he nodded once. "Car," he ordered. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. The ride down felt endless. Naomi's fingers shook. She forced them to still by pressing her nails into her palm. Pain was simple. It gave her something to hold. In the lobby, the black cars were already waiting. The city outside looked the same as it always did. People walking, traffic flowing, steam rising from street food. Normal. Naomi wanted to scream at the normalness of it. She slid into the back seat. Kang got in beside her. No space left between them. Not touching, but close enough to share heat. The car smelled like leather and faint baby powder, and that detail nearly broke Naomi. Kang's phone buzzed. He answered. A beat. Then he spoke, cold and clean. "Put him on." Naomi's breath stopped. A pause. Then a small voice came through the speaker, muffled, scared, trying to be brave. "Mom?" Naomi's lungs collapsed. She snatched the phone without asking. "Malik," she said, voice cracking once, then steadying. "Baby, listen to me. Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Malik whispered. They said you gotta come." Naomi swallowed hard. "Where are you?" she demanded. A man's voice cut in, amused. "Ms. Carter," Detective Park said smoothly. "Such a devoted mother. I love that." Naomi's hands shook. Kang's gaze sharpened beside her, deadly quiet. Naomi forced her voice level. "If you touch him—" "Oh, I won't," Park said. "Not unless you make me. But I will say this. You've been very careless with your associations." Naomi's teeth clenched. "What do you want?" she said. Park chuckled softly. "Come to the river," he said. "The charity gala. Kang Ji-ho will be there. Smile for the cameras. Tell him what you saw on the train. Tell him you recognize my voice. Tell him you understand that the police can love him or bury him." Naomi's stomach turned. "And if I don't?" Park's voice turned lighter. "Then Malik will walk home alone," he said, echoing the note. "And accidents happen in cities." Naomi inhaled once, slow. She forced her voice calm for Malik. "Baby," Naomi said softly, "I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" Malik sniffed. "I'm brave," he whispered. Naomi's eyes burned. "I know," she said. "You got that from me. Listen, look for something. Anything. A sign, a sound. I'm coming." A beat. Malik whispered, "I hear music." Naomi's chest tightened. Gala music. Naomi looked at Kang. The car was already turning, accelerating, the city blurring past. Kang's face was stone, but his hand, resting on his thigh, had tightened into a fist. Naomi ended the call and shoved the phone back toward Kang. Her voice went low. "I'm going," she said. Kang's gaze cut to her. "Yes," he said. Naomi's eyes flashed. "I'm not waiting for you to fix it," she said. "I'm not sitting in a safe room while my son—" Kang leaned in slightly. His voice dropped, dangerously quiet. "You will do what you must," he said, "but you will do it with me." Naomi stared, because in his tone there was no possession directed at her, only violence directed at anyone who threatened what she loved. The car sped toward the river, toward lights and cameras, toward the place where powerful men pretended they weren't monsters. The gala was held in a glass building overlooking the Han River. Inside, the air smelled like champagne and perfume and money. A string quartet played something soft enough to sound like innocence. Naomi stepped out of the car in her worn coat and cheap boots, and heads turned immediately, not because she was loud, but because she didn't match the room, because she was a bruise in a sea of silk. Kang stepped out behind her. Instantly, the crowd shifted. Men bowed. Women smiled too brightly. Security thickened around him like a second suit. Naomi's stomach twisted. This was his world. But tonight, it was the antagonist's stage, and Malik was somewhere inside it. Kang's hand hovered near Naomi's back, not touching, but guiding. Naomi didn't let him steer her. She moved with purpose, scanning faces, listening for any crack in the music that might hide her son's fear. Soon Ho appeared at Kang's shoulder, silent. A hostess approached, smiling like she'd never been scared a day in her life. "Chairman Kang," she said warmly, "we're honored." Kang didn't stop. He didn't answer. The hostess's smile faltered as he passed like she didn't exist. Naomi felt a flash of satisfaction she didn't want to admit. They entered the main ballroom. Light poured from chandeliers overhead. A stage stood at the front with microphones and a banner about Children's Health Initiative, Kangwon Foundation. Naomi's throat tightened. Children. A lie dressed in charity. She spotted Detective Park near the stage, in uniform, smiling for photos with donors like he was a hero. Naomi's stomach turned. Then she saw Malik. Near a side door, half hidden behind a decorative pillar, a man held Malik's shoulder with a grip too casual to be safe. Malik's eyes were wide, but his face was still. Naomi's son had learned, too young, how not to cry in front of predators. Naomi started forward. Kang's hand caught her wrist. Firm, not painful. A tether. Naomi whipped toward him, eyes blazing. Don't, she hissed. Kang's gaze was steady. If you run at them, he murmured, they move him. Naomi's breath came fast. Kang leaned closer, voice low enough to disappear into the music. You will walk, he said, like you belong here, like you are not afraid. Can you do that? Naomi's eyes stung. She forced her chin up. Yes, she said through her teeth. I can. Kang's gaze held hers for a beat. Then he released her wrist. Naomi began walking, one step, then another. Her boots clicked softly on marble, too loud in her ears. She kept her gaze forward, not on Malik, not yet. She approached Detective Park first, because she wanted the man with the badge to see her calm, to underestimate her. Park turned as if he'd been waiting. His smile widened. Ms. Carter, he said warmly, loud enough for nearby donors to hear. How lovely to see you. Naomi stopped in front of him. The air between them was cold. You took my son, Naomi said quietly. Park's smile didn't change. I invited you, he corrected, as if Malik were a +1. Naomi's fingers curled around her phone inside her coat pocket. Recording. Dami had taught her that. If a man like this talks, you let him talk long enough to hang himself. Naomi kept her voice even. You're doing this in public, she said. You're not scared. Park leaned in slightly, still smiling. Because you won't scream, he murmured. Not in here. You're too proud, too controlled, and Chairman Kang won't spill blood in front of cameras. Naomi's eyes narrowed. You don't know me, she said. Park chuckled. Oh, I do, he said. Single mother, foreign, no family here. Your friend Dami is loud but powerless. Your son is your weakness. Naomi's voice sharpened, still quiet. He's not my weakness, she said. He's my reason. Park's smile twitched. Bring Chairman Kang over, Park said softly. Tell him what you saw. Tell him you heard my name. Tell him you understand who owns the police. Naomi's fingers tightened around her phone. And if I don't? She asked. Park's gaze slid past Naomi toward Malik. The man holding Malik's shoulder squeezed slightly. Malik flinched. Naomi's vision tunneled. Naomi forced herself to breathe. Then she did something Park didn't expect. She raised her voice slightly, not screaming, projecting, just enough to carry. You're doing this because you're scared, Naomi said. Park's smile hardened. I'm not scared, he replied. Naomi stepped closer. You are, Naomi said, voice clear. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't need a child as a shield. Nearby, a woman turned her head, interest caught. Park's smile tightened. Lower your voice, he warned gently, like a teacher correcting a misbehaving student. Naomi didn't. She kept her tone even, sharp, truth-like. Chairman Kang doesn't need a shield, Naomi said. But you do. Park leaned in, smile still present but eyes now cold. You're making a mistake, he murmured. Naomi's mouth lifted in something that wasn't a smile. No, she said. You did. You picked a mother. Park's jaw flexed. Naomi continued, because the room was listening now, and Park didn't realize it yet. You said you own the police, Naomi said, louder, clear. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep? A donor nearby frowned. Park's eyes flashed. You don't want to do this, he said. Naomi's fingers hit the button on her phone inside her pocket. Recording. Naomi held Park's gaze. Yes, she said. I do. Park's smile sharpened into something mean. Then, because he couldn't help himself, because men like this always believed the room belonged to them, he spoke. "Chairman Kang's foundation money disappears into places it shouldn't," Park said, voice still smooth. "And I make sure no one investigates. That's our arrangement." A beat. Naomi's breath slowed, because Park had just confessed. Not fully, but enough. Enough with witnesses. Naomi glanced toward the stage. A microphone. A charity speech scheduled. A room full of cameras. Naomi's mind moved fast, clinical, like triage. Identify the bleed. Stop the bleed. Protect the child. She turned her head slightly, just enough to catch Kang's gaze across the room. He was watching, not intervening, letting her lead. Naomi's throat tightened. She mouthed one word: microphone. Kang's gaze sharpened. Sun-ho moved immediately, not running, just redirecting space. Security shifted like a living wall. Park noticed the shift too late. He grabbed Naomi's wrist suddenly, fingers digging in. Naomi didn't flinch. She looked down at his hand like it was something dirty on her coat. Then she looked back up, and she spoke the one sentence that turned the entire room. "Take your hand off me," Naomi said, loud enough for the nearest cameras to catch. Park's smile froze. He tightened his grip slightly, an old habit of control. Naomi's eyes went cold. She raised her other hand calmly and slapped his hand away. Not dramatic, not hysterical. A mother swatting a threat. The sound cracked sharp in the ballroom. Heads turned fully now. The quartet faltered for half a beat, then kept playing like musicians in rich rooms were trained to ignore violence. Park's composure wavered. His smile became real anger. "You don't know what you're doing," he hissed. Naomi stepped back. "Oh, I do," she said. Then she turned and walked, not ran, toward the stage. Park moved after her. Too fast, too obvious. Naomi climbed the stage steps like she had every right, because tonight she did. She reached the microphone. Her hands shook. She forced them still by gripping the mic stand, feeling cold metal under her palm. She looked out at the room, a sea of expensive faces, a sea of power. Naomi drew one breath. Then she spoke into the mic. "My name is Naomi Carter," she said, voice clear, carrying. "I'm a pediatric nurse, and I'm here because Detective Park Min-joon kidnapped my son to blackmail Chairman Kang." A shock ripple moved through the room. Gasps, whispers, a camera flash. Park stepped into view, face pale now, smile gone. "Ms. Carter," he said sharply, reaching for the microphone. "This is—" Naomi lifted a hand. "No," she said. "You will not touch me again." Her voice didn't shake. She continued, eyes on the crowd, because witnesses were protection. "He told me he owns the police," Naomi said. "He said Chairman Kang pays him to make investigations disappear. Those were his words. In this room." Murmurs rose louder now, dangerous. Park's eyes darted, calculating exits. Naomi's throat tightened. "Bring my son," she said into the mic, voice cutting. "Right now." The man holding Malik's shoulder hesitated, because the room was watching, because kidnapping in a hallway was easier than kidnapping under chandeliers. Kang moved then. He didn't rush the stage. He walked into the center of the ballroom, calm and lethal. The crowd parted instinctively. He stopped beneath the chandelier light and spoke in a voice that didn't need volume to be heard. "Release the child," Kang said. Park's face twisted. "You can't," Park began. Kang's gaze snapped to him. The room chilled. Kang spoke again, quieter. "Mien-hye," he said, so soft Naomi almost missed it. Not to Park, to Naomi. An informal sorry, a crack. Because she was paying this price for standing up on a train. Naomi's throat tightened painfully. Park's hand moved toward his waistband. A motion, a threat. Sunho moved, fast. 1 step, 2. A brief struggle, 2 sentences worth of violence, nothing more. A wrist twisted, a grunt. Park's hand came up empty. Security pinned Park without drama, like they'd practiced on worse men. The man holding Malik released him. Malik ran, straight toward Naomi. Naomi dropped the microphone and rushed down the stage steps. She caught Malik so hard her knees nearly buckled. Malik buried his face in her coat, shaking. Naomi held him, breathing him in, smelling his hair, the familiar, clean sweat smell of her child. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. Kang approached slowly. He stopped a few steps away, watching Naomi and Malik like the sight cost him something. Detective Park struggled against the guards. His face was red, eyes wild. "You can't do this," Park shouted. "I have power." Naomi lifted her head. Her voice cut through the chaos, steady, lethal. "You had power," she corrected. "You lost it the second you used a child." Phones were recording now. Donors were backing away. Someone from the press, because there was always press at charity events, pushed closer. A reporter raised a mic. "Detective Park," the reporter called. "Is it true you blackmailed Chairman Kang?" Park's mouth opened, closed, because cameras were hungry, because truth was finally louder than his badge. Naomi pulled her phone out. She held it up, screen glowing. "I recorded him," Naomi said, voice clear. "Everything he said to me. It's saved. It's uploaded." Kang's gaze flicked to her phone. A small nod, approval, respect. Park's face drained, because Naomi had just done the thing he didn't expect. She had used the room, used the system, used the spotlight, publicly undoing his power. The guards hauled Park toward the exit. Park twisted his head toward Naomi, eyes venomous. "This doesn't end," he spat. "You think Kang Ji-ho will protect you? He destroys everything he touches." Kang's voice cut in, cold, final. "Nobody touches you," Kang said, eyes on Park. "Not anymore." Park laughed, bitter. Kang took 1 step closer, voice dropping so only Park could hear, yet the weight of it carried. "Ne Joya," Kang whispered. Naomi's breath caught, because even without knowing Korean, she understood the possession in the sound. The narration, the truth, hit like a drum. "Ne Joya, you are mine." Not as a threat to her, as a death sentence to anyone who tried to take her. Naomi's stomach twisted, heat and fear and something else she refused to name. Park's eyes widened slightly, because he understood that phrase fully, and for the first time tonight, Detective Park looked afraid. They dragged him out. The room erupted into chaotic whispers, sponsors backing away, security tightening, phones lighting up. A public undoing. Permanent. Naomi held Malik tighter. Malik's small hand clutched her coat. Naomi's voice dropped, fierce, into her son's hair. "You did so good," she whispered. "You did so good." Malik nodded shakily. "I was brave," he mumbled. Naomi's throat tightened. "You were," she said. "You always are." Naomi lifted her head. Kang stood there, watching, face controlled. But his eyes looked like a man standing too close to a cliff. He moved fast. He did not pray. He had stopped praying at 15. Naomi sat on a couch she would never be able to afford, her hands wrapped around a warm mug. Ginger tea, honey, her mother's remedy. Naomi's throat tightened again, unwillingly. Kang stood near the window, jacket off now, white shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms. No jewelry, no show, just a man with too much quiet inside him. Naomi broke the silence first, because she couldn't stand the weight of it. "You said sorry," Naomi said, voice low. Kang didn't turn. "Yes," he replied. Naomi's fingers tightened around the mug. "Why?" she demanded. "For what?" Kang's shoulders lifted slightly with a controlled breath. For letting you stand in front of him alone, he said. Naomi's eyes flashed. I chose that, she snapped. Kang turned then. His gaze held hers. You shouldn't have had to, he said. Naomi swallowed hard. The mug was warm against her palms. Her hands finally stopped shaking. Naomi stared at him. How long, she asked, have you been looking for me? Kang's expression didn't change. Since the train, he said. Naomi's jaw tightened. Why? She demanded. Kang's gaze held hers for a long beat. Then he spoke, slow. Because you touched my daughter, he said. Naomi's breath caught, sharp. Kang continued, voice still quiet. You didn't ask who I was, he said. You didn't ask what I could give you. You didn't flatter me. You didn't fear me. Naomi's eyes narrowed. I was tired, she said. Kang's gaze didn't soften. That's not the reason, he replied. Naomi's throat tightened. Kang stepped closer, stopping a careful distance away, not crowding, not taking, just present. You spoke to me like I was a man who could fail, Kang said. And you were right. Naomi swallowed, because she remembered him on the train, jaw tight, eyes empty, a man holding a crying baby like he was losing. Naomi's voice came out quieter. You didn't know what to do, she said. Kang's jaw flexed once. No, he admitted. Naomi stared, a feared man admitting ignorance. It shouldn't have been intimate. It was. Naomi's fingers curled around the mug. And you ran my life, Naomi said, voice sharpening again. You found Dami. You arranged Malik's pickup. You... Kang cut in. I paid your landlord, he said. Naomi froze. What? She whispered. Kang's gaze didn't flinch. I paid him to delay the eviction, Kang said. And I bought the building. Naomi's mouth fell open slightly. Rage hit fast, not fear, anger. You bought my building? Naomi said, voice rising. You think you can fix my life like it's a spreadsheet? Kang's gaze held hers. I bought the building because Detective Park had men watching it, he said. Because your hallway camera was broken. Because your lock is old. Because you and your son were vulnerable. Naomi stood so fast the mug sloshed slightly. She set it down hard on the table. I did not ask you to buy my life, Naomi said, voice shaking now. Kang stepped closer, voice low. I know, he said. Naomi's chest rose and fell hard. Then why? She demanded again. Why would you do that? Kang's gaze held hers. His voice dropped, quiet and specific. The night we met, he said, you didn't look at me like I was dangerous. Naomi's jaw tightened. I didn't know you were... Kang shook his head once. No, he said. You didn't look at me like I was important. Naomi swallowed. Kang continued, eyes steady. You told me my daughter didn't like my cologne, he said. Like I was a man who could adjust. Like I was a father, not a title. Naomi's throat tightened. Kang's voice lowered further. And then you walked away, he said, without waiting to see if I approved. A beat. Kang's jaw tightened, like saying this cost him. I have had people bow to me, he said, beg me, offer me things. You offered me nothing. Naomi's voice came out low. I offered your baby peace, she said. Kang's gaze sharpened. Yes, he said. And you did it without asking for payment. Naomi swallowed hard. The room was quiet except for the faint city hum outside. Neon lights reflected on the window glass like distant water. Naomi's shoulders sagged slightly, exhaustion finally finding a crack. You scare me, Naomi admitted, voice rough. Kang didn't flinch. Good, he said quietly. That means you see me clearly. Naomi stared. I don't want to be owned, she said, voice sharp again. Not by you, not by fear. Kang stepped closer, stopping right at the edge of her space. His gaze held hers, dark and steady. You're not owned, he said. You're chosen. Naomi's breath caught, because the word was different, because choice implied consent, because choice implied she still had power. Naomi's voice dropped. And you're Korean, she said, eyes narrowing. That thing you said to Park? Don't pretend it was nothing. Kang's jaw flexed. Naomi took a step closer herself. The air between them tightened. Tell me, Naomi demanded. Kang's gaze dropped briefly to her mouth again, then lifted. He didn't translate. He didn't soften it. He just said quietly, It was not for you. Naomi's lips parted. Then who was it for? She asked. Kang's voice went lower. For him, Kang said, so he would understand what happens to men who try to take what I will protect. Naomi's throat tightened. She should have stepped back. She didn't. She lifted her chin. Kang Ji-ho, Naomi said. Using his full name wasn't intimate. It was distance, a wall. Kang's gaze didn't change. Naomi's voice went softer, dangerous. What about what I want? She asked. Kang didn't answer immediately. Silence stretched. Then he said simply, Tell me. Naomi's breath shook slightly. I want my son safe, she said. Kang nodded once. He is, he replied. Naomi continued. I want my life back, she said. Not a gilded cage, not a penthouse, my life. Kang's gaze held hers. You can have it, he said. Naomi's eyes narrowed. And what do you want? She asked. Kang's jaw tightened. He didn't speak like a man confessing love. He spoke like a man stating a decision. I want you close enough that I can stop threats before they touch you, he said. Naomi's voice dropped. That's not a relationship, she said. That's surveillance. Kang's gaze darkened. Yes, he said quietly, and it is the only way I know how to keep what matters alive. Naomi's breath caught, because there it was, the wound, not explained, but visible. A man who had learned that love was a liability, a man who had survived by controlling every variable. And Naomi, tired, stubborn Naomi, had become a variable he couldn't ignore. Naomi's voice softened despite her anger. You can't control everything, she said. Kang's gaze flickered, pain, quick and hidden. I know, he murmured. Naomi stepped closer, close enough that warmth moved between them. Neither of them reached out. Neither of them ran. Naomi's voice dropped to almost nothing. Ji-ho, she said. Just his name, alone. Intimate in a way Naomi didn't fully understand until she saw what it did to him. Kang went still, completely, like the world had paused. His eyes sharpened on her face, not dangerous now, struck. Naomi swallowed. She didn't take it back. Kang's voice came out rougher than before. Don't, he said quietly. Naomi's brows pulled together. Why? She whispered. Kang's gaze held hers. Because if you say it again, he murmured, I won't be able to pretend this is only protection. Naomi's breath caught. Her heart thudded once, hard. A long pause. Then Naomi spoke, voice shaking slightly. I'm tired of pretending, she said. Kang's gaze darkened. He stepped closer. Naomi didn't move away. Neither did he. What happened next was not a beginning. It felt somehow like something returning, like a door that had been closed for a very long time being opened from the inside. If you made it to this moment, first of all, I see you, drop a heart in the comments. And listen, if you want to know what happens next, what their life looks like 6 months from now, subscribe right now and hit the bell, because part 2 is coming, and it is going to hurt you in the best possible way. Morning light in the penthouse was softer than Naomi expected. It didn't feel like a prison. It felt like quiet, like the city had finally stopped yelling at her for one breath. Naomi stood at the kitchen counter in one of Kang's shirts, oversized, crisp, smelling like cedar and clean soap. She wasn't smiling, but her shoulders weren't braced for impact either. Kang stood at the espresso machine like a man who had never made coffee for anyone and was determined not to fail at it now. He didn't ask if she slept. He didn't offer a speech. He simply placed a mug in front of her, tea, not coffee. Ginger, honey, the same as last night, because he paid attention. Naomi wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Across the room, Malik sat at the table with a plate of toast and fruit, like he belonged in rooms like this. He looked up at Naomi, then at Kang, then back. "You his girlfriend?" Malik asked bluntly, because children were honest the way adults forgot how to be. Naomi nearly choked on her tea. Kang didn't react. He just looked at Malik calmly, like Malik was an equal. Naomi coughed once. "Malik," Naomi said, warning in her tone. Malik shrugged. "What?" he said. "He got money and he got a baby. That's like 2 jobs." Naomi pressed her lips together hard. Kang's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He set another plate down in front of Malik. More fruit, cut small, careful. Naomi stared at the pieces. A man who could order violence with one word, cutting strawberries into safe shapes. The contradiction made Naomi's chest ache. Malik bit into toast. Then he looked at Kang. "Your baby cry a lot," Malik said casually. Kang's gaze flicked to Naomi once, then back to Malik. "Yes," Kang said. Malik nodded, serious. "My mom make babies stop cry," Malik said, proud. "She got magic." Naomi's throat tightened. Kang's gaze stayed on Naomi for a beat too long. Then he said quietly, "Yes." Naomi looked away, because warmth felt like danger when you'd lived cold too long. Later that day, Naomi stood in her old apartment hallway. The flickering light had been replaced. A new camera sat in the corner. A new lock gleamed on her door. Not flashy, just safe. Dami stood beside Naomi, arms crossed, eyes wide. "Girl," Dami whispered, "is this man renovating your struggle?" Naomi let out a small, exhausted laugh. "He bought the building," Naomi admitted. Dami's mouth dropped open. "Naomi," Dami hissed, "that is not a man. That is a corporate takeover." Naomi glanced down the hallway. Kang stood a respectful distance away, letting Naomi handle her own life. Soon-Ho stood behind him, silent. Kang didn't step into Naomi's space. He didn't tell her what to do. He just stayed. Like presence was his new language. Naomi turned to Dami. "I'm not moving into his penthouse," Naomi said quietly. "Not full-time." Dami blinked. "Okay," she said slowly. "Good. Boundaries. Love that." Naomi continued, voice steady. "But I am taking the housing stability," she said. "I'm signing a lease. In my name. Paperwork. Legal." Dami stared. Then she grinned slowly. "That's my girl," she said. "Build, don't beg." Naomi's throat tightened, because that was the decision. Not choosing him, choosing a future. A life where Malik didn't have to fear doors opening at night. A life where Naomi's kindness didn't have to be punished. A week later, the news broke. Detective Park Min-joon had been arrested. Charges: kidnapping, corruption, blackmail. His face was on every screen. His badge, gone. His power, publicly dismantled. People who had once smiled with him now pretended they'd never heard his name. Consequences. Final. Naomi watched the clip on her cracked phone screen while sitting on her couch, in her apartment. Malik played on the floor, building a crooked tower with blocks. Kang's baby daughter, Yuna, lay on a soft blanket nearby, blinking up at the ceiling light like she was studying the world. She made a small sound, half whine, half complaint. Naomi didn't rush immediately. She waited, watched. Then she reached down, picked Yuna up, and held her the way she had on the train. Steady, sure. Yuna's face scrunched. A cry threatened. Naomi swayed gently. "Girl," Naomi murmured to the baby. "I know. Life is rude." Yuna hiccuped. Naomi patted her back in that same rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Yuna's cry softened into a sigh. Across the room, Kang stood near the doorway, coat still on, like he hadn't decided if he deserved to come fully inside. His gaze stayed on Naomi's hands, on the baby, on the peace Naomi could create with nothing but presence. Naomi didn't look at him at first. She kept her eyes on Yuna. Then she spoke, quiet. "You can come in," Naomi said. Kang didn't move immediately. Naomi lifted her gaze. Kang's eyes held hers. A long pause. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The click was soft. Final. The apartment smelled like Malik's cereal and the cocoa butter Naomi kept on the counter, like her grandmother's old advice, armor. Kang took his coat off carefully and draped it over the back of a chair, like he was trying to learn how to be normal. Naomi watched him. He looked back. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kang said quietly, "You should have run." Naomi's mouth twitched. She bounced Yuna gently. "I did," Naomi replied. "For years." Kang's gaze stayed on her. The quiet stretched, comfortable now, not threatening. Naomi's voice softened. "But that's not how my story goes anymore," she said. Kang stepped closer, stopping beside her, not taking the baby from her, just standing close enough that Naomi could feel warmth from his body, a human heat. Naomi looked up at him. Her voice came out low, steady. "Try me," Naomi said. Kang's eyes darkened, not with threat, with something like devotion he didn't know how to name. And this time, when the room went quiet, it didn't feel like the world was about to end. It felt like the world was finally, making space for her to breathe.